Alright guys, in case you run into this, alright, here's the proper setup. See this? See the burnt? You'll have to replace the element, okay? Or sand that really, really well. Gotta change this. So this is melted, and this blue is going to this. The red is correct, but this blue should be over there, okay? And then this should be there. So we need to correct that, because the problem is it's not cycling, so it's not turning off, and it's staying on too hot, and eventually this gets melted, that gets tripped, wire gets melted. So the red to the bottom, the blue goes all the way over here. Not there. All right, so you'll have to change this. I'm not a big fan of. All right guys, so now that you have rerouted your wires correctly, this wire will have to be replaced, okay? So you'll have to cut it here or cut the damaged wire away. You cannot use this back, and you'll have to replace the element, and that should fix the issue. Otherwise, and you also have to replace this guy. He should be okay if he's new. If not, replace that and that if you're not heating. If you're not starting, then you need to move to this guy here. But deal with that. That'll fix the burning of the wire and also continue to have heat. Yep. All right, so we got our new piece on. Make sure you replace that. That will not give you a good contact, and also that being burnt, the bottom one, it will cause it to heat up more and vibrate, and it will not heat. You gotta replace both. All right, so we're done. You could have soldered this as well. That works fine. But wire nut, and at least put some electrical tape. That will protect anything to occur. At least it will be protected. Make sure nothing's touching the belt. All these are pretty low enough. So, all right, so you should be good. Just put it back together. Always pay attention when you take them apart. If you're not sure, take pictures before you touch it. Otherwise, you can run into issues where you have to call a technician out. So, figure I share this. All right, guys, so last test we're gonna do, okay? I'm gonna put power on, and we're gonna actually do a quick test. Hello. And what we're gonna do, we're actually gonna simulate a test. You're gonna see the element is gonna come on. But then what we're gonna do, you see these wires, you see the blue? That goes over there. That's your high limit thermal cutoff, right? That's your last source. And then it comes to this guy, which is your high limit thermostat. So both of these wires, they cannot be at the same point. So this comes in through the motor, goes here, goes through the element, comes out, goes through this. So when this cycles, when it turns off, cuts off the flow of the element, which is normal. And of course, it never actually, well, it goes all the way through when everything is working correctly. So if he is before this, then he will get so hot, you're gonna melt this wire, which is what was happening. So that's corrected. So now we're gonna turn it on, and you're gonna see the element, it's gonna come on. Now you can see the element is getting power and it is glowing. So this is what it's supposed to do. Now, you might not be able to cycle it on and off right away because you do need some airflow flowing across the element. So if it gets too hot, it might not cycle. The machine could cycle off. So if you do run into that, that does not mean anything. It just means that it is not getting any airflow. So put the machine back together once you have your wires connected properly, and you should be good. The main thing is you want to make sure that you have your wires in the right orientation. If you're going to be taking it apart or changing your element, just remember, guys, you can just remove the first two top screws on those thermostats. You do not need to take the wires off. If you're changing thermostats, all you need to do is take one wire off at a time and then put them back on accordingly. So take pictures of how you take it apart so that you can ensure that it goes back the way it's supposed to. Sometimes these will cycle on and off depending on the airflow. If you're not getting a lot of airflow, then they will cycle. But this cycled just fine. I did not show it. Actually, my battery died. Alright, so you really don't want to run it for too long because you don't have the venting hooked up and you're pulling warm air across the element, moist air. So once it cycles off, if you see it turns off and then you turn it back on and the element comes on, that means that is cycling. It's live right now, so be careful. Don't touch anything until you unplug. That's your main wire and the blue. They should not burn or get hot. So if the machine gets too hot, if the motor overheats, it could turn off if the machine is overheating. So air helps to keep everything nice and cool in here. So make sure that everything is put back together, but you should be able to run it for a little bit just to see the element when it turns off. All right. So I am showing this extra clip just because I need to explain a little bit exactly what's going on here. So if you're experiencing this, you're going to have a situation where your dryer will run for probably one cycle, and then it will blow the thermal high limit, which is the one in the front of the element. You will replace it and it will trip it again. Or if the wires are being burnt, or that red wire, the one at the bottom, is being burnt, that means that the wires are not in the proper location. So I showed it earlier, so just follow the directions and you'll be fine in getting the wires back in the proper location. And also, if they get burnt to the point to where the metal looks weak, you'll have to replace the element and also cut that terminal off. If you do cut the terminal off, make sure you cut it back far enough, because if the copper is compromised, then you will not get the flow of electricity to that element. So you want to get new fresh wire. So cut it back far enough and then find a connector, re-splice it, maybe from an old machine, or you could probably order wire ends. I'm sure you can get them somewhere, but just pay attention when you disconnect your dryer. Make sure you put things back in the same position. All right. This particular situation, if you're not careful, can be very, very frustrating. In fact, this dryer, the customer actually bought it, and I'm not sure how, but it was working, I guess, for a little bit, and I guess the wires just started being burnt. So we had to replace the element, cut the wire off. Well, the wire was already cut, and we had to replace the element as well and all the thermostat. So very frustrating because if you're not sure what you're doing, you just keep replacing the parts and you keep getting the same result. So just be mindful, just be careful when you take things apart so that you don't run into this.